Hello everyone and welcome to an incredibly exciting game from round 1 of yesterday's Pro Chess League. It is Ireland's first women international master, Trisha Kanyamarala, versus the legend himself, former 2800 player Shakhriyar Mamedyarov with a peak rating of 2820 and former world number 2, second only to Magnus Carlsen. It's quite a matchup. The difference in rating is like 600 rating points, but the game here is absolutely stunning, and it's absolutely incredible how Trisha basically dominates Mamedyarov for the entire game, especially his light square bishop. Be very focused on Mamedyarov's light square bishop as the game progresses. So that being said, let's check out what happened here. Trisha, with the white pieces, opens with pawn to d4. We have knight to f6 by Shakhriyar, c4, b6, knight to c3, and bishop to b7. We have knight to f3, and Shakhriyar wants to fianchetto his other bishop as well, goes for g6. We have pawn to d5, grabbing more space in the center as Shah allowed it, bishop to g7, and now grabbing more space in the center with e4. We have castles, and now bishop to d3. Pawn to e6, Shakhriyar challenges the central pawn structure, and of course she just castles. We have pawn to d6, and interestingly, the position has been reached before, and Trisha definitely did her homework on this one, because this position has been reached 3 times, and in all of the 3 games, the player with the black pieces was Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. So I believe she was still within her preparation. Mamedyarov had it against Timur Garev, he had it against Boris Gelfand, and also against Levon Aronyan. And the moves that were played here are bishop to c2, rook to e1, and also pawn to h3. She goes for pawn to h3, which is the move Mamedyarov had against Boris Gelfand, and interestingly, Mamedyarov won all the 3 games that I've mentioned, so Mamedyarov knows this position very, very well with the black pieces. And in the game against Gelfand, Mamedyarov played rook to e8, but here he goes knight b to d7, and it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. So Trisha continues developing, bishop to e3, we have rook to e8, and now queen to d2. We have knight to c5, now going after the bishop on d3, bishop back to c2, and now just e captures on d5. You could also consider a5 to prevent that pawn to b4 move, but Mamedyarov has a different plan. Captures on d5, we have e captures on d5, and now just knight c to e4, forcing some trades here as the queen on d2 is attacked. So here we have knight captures on e4, knight captures, bishop captures on e4, rook captures, and now just rook a to c1. And the bishop still not looking all that great on b7. This is a fine bishop, but this bishop not that much. It doesn't really have any place on a6. One thing you could do is bring it back to c8 and then shift it over to f5. So here we have queen to f6, preparing to bring the other rook into the game, and pawn to b3 as the b2 pawn is hanging now. So pawn to b3, and now rook a to e8. We have bishop to g5 now, challenging the queen, queen to f5, and now rook f to e1. She's offering a trade of rooks along the e file, pawn to h5, and now rook captures on e4. We have rook captures on e4, and now just rook to e1, just trading material. Bishop to c8, Shah knows that he needs to do something about this light square bishop, so bishop to c8, and now this gives Trisha an idea, bishop to d8, going after the weak backward c7 pawn. And how can Mamedyarov play this? Now, it's not impossible to defend the pawn. You could just capture on e1 with check play queen d7, but this is easier said than done, because let's say rook captures on e1, check, queen captures, and now you go queen back to d7, queen to e7 will follow. And now there's really nothing better than to trade. Queen captures, bishop captures, and now bishop to f5. Okay, let's say Mamedyarov goes after the queenside pawn structure, and he will win at least 1 pawn, but that's all there is. Like king to f1, let's say bishop to b1, she can play a3, and after bishop to a2, going after the b3 pawn, she's gonna play knight to d2. And now the only way to win material here is to trade the bishop for knight. But once you trade the bishop for knight, we are left with bishops of opposite color. Let's say king to e2, bishop captures, bishop captures on b3. The king will defend the c4 pawn, and okay, Mamedyarov will be up a pawn. But it's bishops of opposite color, and not much to look forward to here. So Shah knows that if he plays that, it's most likely a draw. So he goes back, bishop to f8. It's a very tricky move. It defends the c7 pawn via tactic, because if you capture now, then Shah can just trade here, rook captures, and play queen d7, and the bishop is now trapped. And if you go bishop here, then queen to b7 again traps the bishop. So instead, after bishop to f8, she plays knight to d4, attacks the queen on f5, rook captures on e1 with check, queen captures on e1, and now queen to d7. Notice how the bishop is still unable to enter the game. Bishop back to f6, and now pawn to a6. Now Mamedyarov wants to play b5 and well, create some chances on the queen side, maybe even allow the bishop to be developed via that queen side. Knight to c6, now going after that e7 square, and now bishop to b7. Mamedyarov would be the happiest man on the planet if he could just trade his bishop for knight, but of course Trisha does not allow this. Knight back to d4, we have b5, and now queen to e2, adding a more support to that c4 pawn. B captures, and queen to a4. Now putting pressure on c4 and a2, but her queen is nicely defending both of those pawns. And here she plays queen to b2, attacks the bishop on b7, which is also a mistake here, but it's a convincing one, as Shakhriyar does not pick up on it. He plays pawn to c5. He just counters with an attack on her knight on d4, but the way to play this is actually just to play queen captures on c4. You give up the bishop here, but it's only temporarily, because after queen captures, now you take the bishop on f6. How do you do that? Queen to c1 check, only move king h2, and now queen to f4 check will pick up the bishop on f6. King to g1, queen captures, also the knight is hanging, so this would be very good for Shakhriyar. But she convinced him that's not possible. He plays pawn to c5, and now she plays knight back to f3, which is incredible, as it again allows queen captures on c4 with the same idea. Queen c1 check, queen f4 check, queen captures bishop. But Shakhriyar misses it again, and he plays queen to b4. He offers a queen trade, and she declines. Queen back to e2, keeps an eye on the c4 pawn. We have queen to b1 with check, king to h2, and now queen to f5. Attacking the bishop on f6, bishop back to h4, now remaneuvering the bishop to g3 to put pressure on that d6 pawn, but also the bishop is very nice here, keeping an eye on that f6 square. So bishop to c8, Shakhriyar still without a way of actually developing or doing something with the light square bishop. Queen to e8, now just threatening to win the game with bishop to e7. So queen to d7 by Shah, and now queen back to e2. Shakhriyar plays pawn to a5. Now maybe you could put a threat with a move like bishop to a6, but knight to d2. She says nope, the c4 pawn will be very well defended at all times. Queen back to f5, and now knight back to e4, now controlling that f6 square, but also putting pressure on the d6 pawn. So here we have bishop to a6, putting pressure on the c4 pawn, and there are a lot of moves you could play here. She goes for knight to f6 with check, king to g7, and knight to e8 with check. Shah repeats king g8, and she repeats knight to f6 check, king to g7, knight to e8 with check, and now king to h8. Shah not ready to call it a day with a repetition of moves. He wants to keep the game going and plays king to h8, and now he gives her a completely winning position, but both of them are now in time trouble. She misses it. She plays a fine move, queen to b2 with check, but the way to play this is bishop to f6 with check. The problem is now after king to h7, she just has to play bishop to b2, and this is the only move that wins. So pretty tricky one to find. But now the problem is there's no move you can play here for black. Whatever you try, let's say you even pick up the c4 pawn, let's say queen to f4 check, king to g1, and bishop captures on c4, attacks the white queen, just queen to e1, and there's no defense against all of the threats, because knight to f6 check will be deadly, and then if the king goes to h6, bishop to c1 will just pick up the queen on f4. So there's really nothing you can do. If bishop captures here, you're just going to play knight to f6 check. Now king h6, bishop c1 wins the queen. And of course, if you go to g7, the knight captures on h7 check will pick up the queen on f4. But this is only one of the lines. All of the lines are winning after bishop to f6 with check. But you have to see bishop to b2 and everything that follows. She played queen to b2 with check, which is also very nice for white. But it allows this very stubborn defense with pawn to f6. Okay, bishop captures on f6 with check, king to g8, and now bishop to h4. Now the bishop has to be very careful, otherwise queen to g7 might just end up with checkmate. Bishop captures on c4, we have knight to f6 with check. King to f7, now queen to b7 with check. The king hunt begins. Bishop to e7 only move, and now we have knight to g8. She offers the knight for queen captures on e7, but truth be told, that's the best Mamedyarov can hope for. He has to go for this, and then after queen captures on e7, just queen to e5 with check, and okay, captures, and it's bishops of opposite color, should be a draw. Even d6, just bishop to b5, the d7 square is covered. You have nothing to worry about here. But instead, after knight to g8 with check, Shach played queen to e5 with check, bishop to g3, and now there are a couple of moves he can play, but the position is bad for him. However, he played bishop captures on d5. We reached the position from the thumbnail, and now, yes, his queen is hanging, but also her queen is hanging on b7. Problem for him is that now she is completely winning here, but she has to play a very, very specific move in big time trouble. So feel free to pause the video and to win the game for Trisha while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting that only thing that's needed is one little check and Shach can resign. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is knight to h6 with check. If she found this move, or rather had she found this move, the game would be over because there is no move you can make. If you put the king on dark squares, then bishop captures queen on e5 will come with check, and then you're just up a queen. You cannot go to g8, so only squares you have available are e6, e8, and f8. And regardless of where you put the king, if king to e6, then queen c8 check. Next move, you pick up the black queen. If you go here, again, just a nice check. You pick up the queen, and of course, if you go here, just a nice check, and you will pick up the queen on the next move. But she was in severe time trouble after bishop captures on d5. She trusted the former 2800. She played bishop captures on e5, which seems like, okay, you can still just trade and at least you'll get a draw. But the problem is she also blundered a piece now, because Mamedyarov just captured on b7, and now her bishop is hanging and also her knight is hanging. And she plays knight captures on e7, other moves don't help. And here Shakhriyar just played the d captures on e5, and it was in this position on move 51 that Trisha Kanyamarala resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. If you look at it carefully, all of the squares that the knight can go to are covered by either the king, the pawn, or the bishop, and here the knight is just trapped. On the next move, whatever she plays, Shach will pick up the knight, and then he will be up a full bishop. So absolutely incredible game where first Mamedyarov had that chance. It was a very, very interesting game where she was completely dominant. She kept controlling that light square bishop for the entire game, and then she gave Mamedyarov an opportunity for this sort of temporary bishop sacrifice if queen captures on c4 was found, followed by queen c1 check, queen f4, and queen to f6. But then he missed it, and then she had an opportunity where she could have gone for that idea with knight to f6. With bishop to f6 check, followed by bishop to b2. Again, absolutely incredible line, and then in the end, just a nice after bishop captures on d5, just knight to h6 with check. Yes, you are down a few seconds on the clock. Both of your queens are hanging, but if you can move your queen with check, and knight to h6 would allow just that. Unfortunately for her, the game was not played out until the very end in her favor. But very nicely done. This weird sort of a Queen's Indian setup Mamedyarov went for, where he crushed incredibly strong grandmasters like Boris Gelfand, Levon Aronyan, and Timur Gareev. She outplayed him in the line, but she just couldn't pull through to the rest of the game. So great game by her. Like I said, first Irish women international master. We'll see how she does in the rest of the Pro Chess League. But this one goes to the former 2800 Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and congratulations once again to those of you who solved this position. I would like to thank Kenneth Fraser, the Baku Cities for Trade, Ricky Black, and Cash Johnson for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Pro Chess League and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.